They say betrayal doesn't begin with a kiss. It begins with a smile. That night, I learned just how true that was. Dinner was quiet, the kind of quiet that creeps in after 30 years of marriage. The clinking of forks, the soft hum of the old fridge, the TV murmuring something no one was really watching. And then, that sound, a soft buzz on the table. My husband's phone. He looked down, and suddenly, he smiled. Not just any smile. It was the kind of smile I hadn't seen in years, soft, playful, private. The kind of smile a man gives when he feels seen. For a second, I thought maybe he'd read something funny online. But when he typed back quickly, his fingers trembling slightly, I realized this wasn't a joke. "Who's that?" I asked, trying to sound casual, trying to sound like the woman who still believed her marriage was safe. He didn't even look up. "Just work," he said. "You wouldn't know her." Her. That word stuck in my chest like a thorn. He set the phone face down. The light blinked again. Another message. Another smile. And for the first time in years, I felt like a stranger sitting across from my own husband. After dinner, he kissed my cheek like always, that routine kiss of habit, not love, and went to take a work call. I watched him from the window. The way he turned his back to the house, the way his voice softened, almost tender, the way he laughed. I used to love that laugh. Now it sounded like betrayal. I wanted to look away, to convince myself I was imagining things. But deep down, a quiet voice whispered, "No, this is real. Something is wrong." That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, counting every sigh, every shuffle of his body beside me. He slept soundly. I didn't. Morning came, and the sun felt colder than usual. I made breakfast, just like always, eggs, toast, coffee. He didn't touch any of it. Instead, he said he had an early meeting. He hadn't had one of those in years. I watched him tie his tie, spray cologne, check his phone. Every move was careful, deliberate, almost rehearsed. When he left, I sat down at the table where his phone had buzzed last night. The plate still had crumbs from the dinner we barely shared. The silence felt heavier now, as if the walls themselves knew. I whispered to the empty kitchen, "Who are you? And why are you taking him away from me?" The kettle whistled softly in reply. Later that day, I found myself checking his phone charger gone. He had taken it with him. He'd never done that before. He used to leave it by the bedside, tangled in the cord, just like our lives, messy but honest. Now he guarded it like treasure. Every woman knows the signs. The sudden secrecy, the new cologne, the strange energy that fills the room but leaves no trace. Still, I wanted to believe this wasn't what it looked like. I told myself, "You're overthinking. You've been married too long for games." But when I looked in the mirror, I saw fear staring back. Not the fear of losing him, but the fear of realizing I already had. That night, I cooked his favorite meal, roasted chicken with lemon and herbs, mashed potatoes, a glass of his favorite red wine. I wanted to see if he'd even notice. He didn't. He ate quickly, scrolling his phone under the table like a teenager hiding from his parents. At one point, he smiled again, that same soft, secret smile, and my chest tightened so hard I could barely breathe. "Everything okay?" I asked. He looked up, startled, then laughed awkwardly. Yeah, just a funny meme." But when he turned the screen toward himself again, I saw it just for a second. A name, Emily, and a heart emoji. The room went silent. The clock ticked louder than ever. My ears rang. My throat burned. I looked at him, the man who had once sworn he'd never lie to me, and thought, so this is how it starts. Not with yelling, not with tears, but with a single name on a glowing screen. He didn't notice me staring. He just kept typing, smiling, lost in a world where I no longer existed. I excused myself, walked to the bathroom, and locked the door. My hands were shaking so badly I had to grip the sink. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Not because I was angry, but because the woman I used to be, the trusting wife who believed in forever, had just died quietly inside me. I sat on the floor, knees pulled to my chest, whispering, "Don't cry yet. Not yet. You need to be sure." And so, I decided that night I would find out the truth. Even if it broke me. Even if it destroyed everything I thought I knew about love. Because sometimes the only way to protect your heart is to let it shatter first. If this story touched something inside you, tell me where you're watching from. Have you ever felt that silent kind of heartbreak? The one that hides behind a smile? Subscribe to Voices of Auntie Tae for more family drama stories that break your heart, heal it, and remind you that no one deserves to feel invisible at their own dinner table. For the next few days, I tried to pretend nothing had changed. I cooked breakfast. I watered the garden. I laughed when he laughed, even when the sound of it felt like a lie. But you can't unsee the truth once it's shown itself. You can only decide how long you're willing to look away. Richard became different. His shirt smelled like cologne I didn't buy. He shaved twice a day, the man who once said shaving on weekends was a waste of time. And his phone always by his side. Even when he took out the trash, he started taking calls on the porch, his voice lowered, soft, careful. When I stepped outside, he'd hang up mid-sentence, smile, and say, "Just work stuff, honey." But his eyes, they didn't match his smile anymore. They had that flicker, that nervous glint, like a boy caught sneaking out at night. One evening, I was folding laundry in our bedroom when his phone buzzed again. The screen lit up for half a second before it dimmed, but long enough for me to see the name. Emily. My stomach twisted. The same name I'd seen at dinner. The same heart. I didn't even need to open the message. That one glimpse said everything words couldn't. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands trembling around one of his shirts, the blue one he only wore on Fridays. It smelled faintly of jasmine. Not my perfume. Not mine. I wanted to scream, to throw his phone against the wall, to demand answers right there. But instead, I folded that shirt perfectly and placed it on the pile. Because sometimes silence can say louder things than rage ever could. That night, he said he had to meet a client. He left around 6. By 8, I drove to the cafe where he used to take me on Sunday mornings, the one with the little red chairs outside. I parked across the street and waited. The sky turned gold, then pink, then dark. At 8:47, he arrived. I recognized his car instantly, the dent on the back bumper, the little sticker our daughter gave him years ago. He stepped out, checked his watch, and smiled. Then she appeared. Young, pretty, soft curls, bright eyes, red scarf. Emily. They hugged like old lovers, not new ones. That slow, lingering kind of embrace that comes from familiarity, not excitement. She touched his face. He laughed. And in that moment, I realized something I didn't expect. The pain didn't come from seeing him with her. It came from realizing I hadn't seen him happy in years. That hurt even more. I didn't confront him that night. I drove home in silence, my hands tight on the steering wheel, the image of that hug replaying in my mind again and again. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just sat in the driveway until the porch light came on. When he returned later, he smelled like her perfume again, sweet, floral, wrong. He kissed my forehead like always, then disappeared into the shower. I watched the water run under the door. It used to mean comfort. Now it sounded like washing away guilt. The next morning, I started writing a list in my journal. Signs he's not the same man I married. He hides his phone. He lies about work. He smells like something unfamiliar. He laughs when I'm not looking. He stopped saying we. It was a small list, but it felt heavy, heavier than truth should ever feel. I read it over and over until the ink blurred. Then I whispered to myself, if I can write it down, I can face it. That evening, he called from the office. His voice on the phone sounded too calm, too rehearsed. So I did something I never thought I would. I checked our bank statement, and there it was. Dinner charges, hotel receipts, flowers. Not once, but many times. For a moment, I couldn't move. The numbers blurred into tears. All those years we struggled, all those nights I stayed up balancing bills. And he was spending our savings on someone else's laughter. I sat in the dark, my heart pounding in my ears, and realized something had broken inside me, something I might never fix again. When he came home, I didn't ask questions. He smiled, kissed my cheek, and said, "Long day, you wouldn't believe the traffic." I smiled back, just as gently. "Yeah," I said, "some things take longer than they should." He didn't notice. Men never do when their lies feel comfortable. But as he walked past me, I whispered quietly, "Enjoy your peace, Richard," because I just found mine. He didn't hear it, but I did. And for the first time in weeks, I felt the smallest spark of power return. That night I closed my journal and wrote one more sentence. Tomorrow, I find out the truth no matter how much it hurts. Because every woman deserves the truth, even when it breaks her. Even when it ends everything. If you were in my place, would you confront him or wait for more proof? Tell me in the comments and let me know where you're watching from. It warms my heart to see stories like this reach women and men from all over the world. Subscribe to Voices of Auntie Tae for more family drama stories that speak to your heart. Stories about love, loss, betrayal, and the quiet strength it takes to rebuild yourself when no one is watching. Because sometimes, the most powerful revenge is living beautifully after the truth. The morning after I made my list, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. The house was quiet, too quiet. It's strange how silence can be louder than any argument. For 30 years, I'd believed I knew everything about my husband, what kind of tie he'd wear to church, how he took his coffee, even the way he sighed when something was wrong. But that morning, I realized I didn't even know the man sitting across from me anymore. When he left for work, I waited exactly 10 minutes. Then I put on my coat and followed. I wasn't proud of it. But sometimes a woman has to choose between her dignity and her sanity. And I was losing both. He drove to the other side of town to a place we never used to go together. The streets were lined with small cafes and boutiques, the kind of neighborhood for people who still believed love was effortless. He parked outside a florist's shop. Through the window, I saw him hand the woman a folded note. She smiled, nodded, and packed a bouquet of white lilies. Lilies. My favorite. The ones he hadn't bought for me in years. He walked out with the bouquet in one hand and his phone in the other. Then he typed something quickly, smiling. I didn't need to see the screen to know who he was texting. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I whispered, "Not today, not yet." And I kept following. He stopped at a cafe, the same one I had seen from across the street that night. This time, I parked closer. My heart pounded like it wanted to escape. When he went inside, I waited a moment, then followed him in. He didn't see me. He sat in the back corner, his shoulders relaxed in a way they never were at home. Across from him sat Emily, the red scarf again. The same soft curls, the same smile that had replaced mine. She reached for his hand, and he let her hold it right there, in public. My chest tightened. My throat burned. I wanted to walk up to their table and scream. But instead, I turned away and sat at another table behind a column. I ordered coffee. I wouldn't drink, and listened. Their voices floated softly through the air, familiar, intimate, like a song I'd forgotten the words to. Emily said, "She still doesn't know, does she?" And Richard, my husband, laughed. That deep, gentle laugh that used to belong to me. He said, "No, she thinks I'm too old to start over." I think I stopped breathing. For a long moment, the world went blurry. The chatter, the clinking cups, even the music, everything disappeared. All I could hear was that one sentence. She thinks I'm too old to start over. Start over. With her, my heart didn't break all at once. It cracked quietly, like thin glass. And in the silence that followed, I realized I was done pretending. I stood up, left some money on the table, and walked out before they could see me. Outside, the wind hit my face like a slap, but it felt real grounding. I leaned against my car and whispered to myself, "He doesn't even know what I'm capable of." That night, when he came home, he greeted me with a smile, as if the day had been perfectly ordinary. He kissed my cheek, the same lips that had touched another woman hours ago. He sat down to eat the meal I'd cooked, roast chicken again, his favorite, and said, "You always make it perfect, sweetheart." I looked at him for a long time, studying every wrinkle, every lie hiding behind those tired eyes. Then I smiled back. "Thank you, Richard. I just hope you enjoy it while it lasts." As this creed. He looked confused for a second, but then he laughed, thinking I was joking. He had no idea that while he'd been smiling at another woman, I had been watching, learning, recording. When he went to bed that night, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. For the first time in my life, I typed his name into a search bar, his company email, his number, his schedule. Piece by piece, I started collecting the puzzle he thought I'd never see. Receipts, bank transfers, hotel reservations, and then photos. Pictures from a staff retreat he'd told me was work only. He wasn't alone in any of them. There she was, always in the background. Emily, her hand on his shoulder, his smile wider than it had been in years. It hurt to look at, but I made myself, because pain, when faced directly, becomes strength. And I was finally ready to stop being afraid. When the clock struck midnight, I closed the laptop and whispered to the quiet house, "You may think I'm blind, Richard, but I've just opened my eyes." I didn't know what I'd do yet, But I knew this. I wouldn't cry for him again. Not tonight. Not ever. If you were in my place, would you confront him right away? Or keep gathering proof? Tell me in the comments and let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing messages from every corner of the world. It reminds me how connected we are through these family drama stories. Subscribe to Voices of Auntie Tae for more stories of heartbreak, discovery, and the quiet courage it takes to stand tall again. Because sometimes, strength doesn't sound like shouting. It sounds like silence before the storm. Sometimes, the truth doesn't knock. It just shows up flashing on your phone screen, refusing to be ignored. It was a Sunday afternoon, quiet and gray. I was in the kitchen washing dishes when his phone, left carelessly on the counter, buzzed twice. He was in the garage, fixing something that didn't need fixing the same way he'd been fixing his guilt these past weeks. I didn't mean to look, but curiosity and pain share the same heartbeat. The screen lit up, and I froze. I miss you already, my love. It wasn't from me. But worse, it wasn't to me either, because the message wasn't received. It was sent, and it was addressed to Emily. For a moment, the world went completely still. The faucet ran over my hands, the water turning lukewarm, then cold. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I stared at that message, 6 simple words, and felt 30 years of marriage collapse silently inside me. He walked in a minute later, humming. He didn't notice his phone, didn't notice my silence. He just smiled, kissed the top of my head, and said, "Smells good in here." I turned off the water and dried my hands slowly. "Your phone went off," I said softly. He froze for just a split second, but I saw it. That tiny flicker of panic. Then the performance began. "Oh yeah? Probably just work." He picked up the phone, his thumb moving too quickly, deleting too much. Then he turned around with that same fake laugh. "Just some invoice mix-up." "Invoice." "Right." With a heart emoji. I didn't respond. I just looked at him, really looked at him, and realized I didn't recognize the man in front of me anymore. Same face, same voice, different soul. That night, he acted as if nothing had happened. He poured himself a drink, turned on the game, and joked about dinner plans. I sat across from him, nodding, pretending I was still the wife who believed in him. Inside, my thoughts were cold and sharp. When he went to shower, I opened my drawer and took out a small box, the one that held our wedding photos. We'd been so young. His eyes used to light up when he looked at me. Now, those same eyes dimmed every time I walked into a room. I traced my finger over our wedding picture and whispered, "Where did we go wrong, Richard? Or did I just never notice who you really were?" Later that night, he came to bed smelling like the same cologne I'd once bought him for our anniversary. Back then, it had smelled like love. Now, it smelled like lies. He turned off the lamp and mumbled, "Love you." I didn't say it back, and he didn't notice. Because that's how love dies, not with shouting or slammed doors, but with silence that no one bothers to fill anymore. The next morning, I decided to test him. As he drank his coffee, I asked casually, "Who's Emily?" He choked a little, then laughed too loudly. "What, Emily? Just someone from the office, why?" I tilted my head. "No reason. The name just sounded familiar." His eyes darted away. The silence between us stretched thin. And that's when I knew I didn't need more proof. He'd already given me everything I needed to see. After he left for work, I sat down with my notebook and wrote a new list. Things I've lost. Trust. Sleep. My best friend. The man I thought I married. Then I wrote one more line underneath and it gave me peace. But I haven't lost myself, not yet. I decided to keep the message. I took a photo of it before he could delete it. Proof. Not for revenge, but for truth. I knew I wasn't ready to confront him yet, not until I was steady enough to stand without shaking. But I also knew the moment would come. And when it did, I wouldn't be the same woman he thought he could lie to. That evening, he came home early, carrying takeout and fake charm. "I thought we could have a date night," he said. Like nothing was broken. I smiled faintly. "Sure, why not?" We ate quietly. He talked about work, weather, the neighbor's dog, everything except the truth. At one point, he reached across the table and took my hand. His skin felt warm. Mine felt numb. I looked into his eyes and said gently, "You know, I had a dream last night." He smiled. "Yeah? About what?" "I dreamed you sent a message to the wrong woman." His hand froze. The color drained from his face. The silence that followed was deafening. I didn't say another word. I just watched him squirm in the chair he used to call home. That night, he barely slept. And for the first time in weeks, I did. Because I had stopped begging for honesty and started preparing for freedom. Tell me in the comments, if you received a message like that from your partner, would you confront them or walk away in silence? And please let me know where you're watching from. It means so much to me to see this story reach hearts from New York to Manila, from London to Saigon. Subscribe to Voices of Auntie Tae for more family drama stories that reveal the truth about love, betrayal, and the quiet power of women who refuse to be broken. Because sometimes, silence isn't a weakness. It's the sound of a woman reclaiming her strength. For days after that message, I didn't speak of it. Not a word. I smiled when he smiled. I laughed when he laughed. And every night, I watched the way his eyes darted to his phone, terrified of a mistake. He thought my silence meant forgiveness. He didn't realize it meant preparation. That Thursday evening, I decided it was time. The house was spotless, the table set. I cooked his favorite meal steak, roasted potatoes, red wine breathing beside the plates. Candles flickered softly, the kind of glow that used to mean love. Tonight, it meant ending. When he came home, he looked surprised. "What's all this?" he asked, loosening his tie. "Just dinner," I said. He smiled, maybe even relieved. "Feels like old times." I smiled back. Exactly like old times. He didn't notice the small box on the side table, the one holding my phone, quietly recording. He didn't notice my calm either. He just sat down and started eating. For a few minutes, we made small talk. He complained about his boss, his co-workers, traffic, the usual noise people use to fill the space between lies. I nodded, sipping wine, waiting. And then, he said it the same line he always used before disappearing. "I might have to go to the office tomorrow. Big project deadline." I tilted my head, smiling. "Oh, really? Maybe Emily can help you finish it." His fork froze halfway to his mouth. He blinked, trying to read my face. "What did you just say?" "You heard me." I set my glass down gently. I said maybe Emily can help. She seems helpful. His color drained. He opened his mouth, closed it again, like a fish gasping for air. Finally, he stammered, "Honey, that's not—" I cut him off. "Don't insult me with another lie." I reached into the box and pulled out my phone. The screen lit up the photo of him and Emily in the cafe, their hands intertwined. I placed it on the table between us. The candlelight reflected off the glass like fire. He stared at it, then looked up at me. His voice cracked. "Where did you get that?" "Does it matter?" I said quietly. "I just want to know when you plan to tell me. Before or after our next anniversary." He looked away, shaking his head. "It's not what you think." I laughed softly. "Oh, Richard, it's exactly what I think. You made it too easy." He reached for my hand, desperate. "Please, listen, I made a mistake. I felt lonely, and she what?" I asked. "Made you feel young again? Seen? Desired?" His eyes filled with tears. "Please, don't do this." I leaned forward, my voice calm but sharp. "I'm not the one who did this, Richard. You did. You chose this. You looked at me every night, pretending nothing was wrong." He covered his face with his hands. "I'm sorry. It's not where prof is." I took a slow breath. Sorry doesn't fix betrayal, it just names it. For a long while, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the ticking clock and the quiet tremble of his breathing. I thought about all the nights I had believed his lies, all the times I had doubted myself instead of him. And suddenly, I felt something unexpected, not anger, not sadness. Relief. Because the truth, no matter how painful, had finally set me free. He reached for my hand again. "Can we try again?" he whispered. "Please, I can fix this." I looked at him, the man I had loved, the man who had broken me, and I realized something profound. I didn't hate him. I just didn't trust him anymore. And love without trust is just a ghost pretending to be alive. "I think," I said softly, "you've already fixed everything for her." His face crumpled. Tears fell, real ones this time. "I don't want her. I want you." I stood up slowly. "No, Richard. You wanted options. You wanted to be loved without having to love back. And now you have the result of that choice." He tried to speak, but I raised my hand. "Don't, because if I hear one more lie tonight, I might start believing them again." I took the plates to the sink, the same way I had done every night for 30 years. Behind me, I heard him whisper, "I'm so sorry." I didn't turn around. I simply said, "I'm sorry too, Richard. I'm sorry I ever believed you were different." When I finally looked back, he was gone, the front door left half open, swinging quietly in the wind. I walked over, closed it, and locked it. Then I whispered, "This time, the lock's for me." That night, I sat alone at the dinner table, the candles still flickering. I looked at the empty chair across from me and felt a strange peace settle in. It wasn't the ending I'd imagined for my marriage, but maybe it was the beginning of something else, something honest. If this moment touched your heart, tell me in the comments, would you have confronted him the same way or walked away in silence? And let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing our family drama stories connect with people from so many corners of the world, from Texas to Toronto, from Manila to Melbourne. Subscribe to Voices of Auntie Tae for more emotional family drama stories, stories that break your heart, heal it, and remind you that even the quietest woman can reclaim her voice. Because sometimes, the most powerful sound in a broken marriage is the sound of a woman choosing herself. When the door closed behind him that night, the silence didn't rush in all at once. It crept slowly, filling the corners of the house where laughter used to live. I stood there for a long time, staring at the door he'd just walked through. It felt strange how something so simple, so ordinary, could mark the end of an entire lifetime. 30 years. 30 years of good mornings, grocery lists, inside jokes, arguments, shared pillows, and promises whispered in the dark. And it all ended with a door swinging shut. The next morning, I woke up to an empty bed. The indentation where he used to sleep looked almost like a ghost, quiet, shallow, and gone. I reached out instinctively, as if my hand hadn't gotten the message yet. The sheets were cold. In the kitchen, the coffee pot was silent. I used to make 2 cups, one for him, one for me. Now there was only one. The smallest things hurt the most. I didn't cry. Not at first. Instead, I moved slowly, deliberately washing dishes, watering plants, folding laundry that only smelled like me. Every corner of the house felt bigger, emptier, like space had stretched around my loneliness. Around noon, my daughter called. "Mom, are you okay? You sound quiet." Quiet. That's what happens when your world falls apart without sound. "I'm fine, sweetheart," I said softly, because mothers lie not to protect themselves, but to protect the ones they love. After the call, I sat by the window. The rain had started, light and hesitant. Drops tapped gently against the glass, like the world was mourning with me. Days passed. I stopped waiting for the sound of keys in the lock. I stopped checking my phone. And slowly, the pain that had once felt unbearable began to change shape. It wasn't a sharp wound anymore. It became a dull ache, constant but bearable. Like a scar that still remembers where it came from. I started to notice little things again. The smell of rain on the porch, the way sunlight fell across the kitchen table in the morning, the quiet hum of the refrigerator. Life had continued, even when I thought mine had stopped. One evening, I took a walk around the neighborhood. The air smelled like jasmine and wet soil. I passed by couples holding hands, kids laughing on bikes, neighbors waving hello. It hurt, but it also reminded me that not every ending meant the world was cruel. Sometimes it just meant a chapter had closed. When I came home, I saw our wedding photo still hanging by the hallway. I took it down and placed it in a drawer. Not out of hate, but because I no longer needed to look at it to remember. I whispered to the picture, "You were beautiful once, but you don't belong on the wall anymore." She has backed into light. The next morning, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years. I made breakfast just for me. Scrambled eggs, toast, a little fruit, and a fresh cup of coffee. I turned on the radio. Music filled the kitchen again, not the sound of pain, but of something gentler. Something healing. I laughed out loud when I spilled juice on the counter. It felt strange, the sound of my own laughter, the first one that didn't have to hide behind someone else's comfort. That day, I cleaned the house from top to bottom. Not out of anger, but out of renewal. Every drawer I emptied felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. When I found his old shirt in the closet, I didn't cry this time. I folded it neatly, placed it in a box, and whispered, "Goodbye." Night came softly. The air smelled of rain again, but this time I didn't feel lonely. I made tea, wrapped myself in a blanket, and sat by the window watching the streetlights shimmer in puddles. For the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. Because pain doesn't stay forever. It teaches. It transforms. It reminds you who you were before you forgot yourself in someone else's story. And I was remembering, When I finally went to bed, I whispered to the empty room, "I'm still here. Not as a wife, not as someone's second choice, but as me whole, breathing, learning how to live again." And in that moment, the silence no longer felt like punishment. It felt like freedom. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to rebuild yourself after losing someone you thought would never leave? If so, what helped you stand again? And please share where you're watching from. I love seeing how far our family drama stories travel, reaching hearts from California to Vietnam, from London to Sydney. Subscribe to Voices of Auntie Tae for more stories like this, stories that remind us that heartbreak isn't the end. It's just the beginning of a woman rediscovering her strength. Because even when love leaves, courage stays. It had been almost 3 weeks since Richard left. I thought the hardest part was over. I was wrong. The pain doesn't always scream sometimes, it knocks softly, dressed as closure. That afternoon there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, I saw her, Emily. She was standing there in a pale coat, clutching her purse like it was armor. Her eyes were red, swollen not from anger, but from crying. For a long moment neither of us spoke. The rain had just stopped, and drops still clung to her hair like tiny pieces of glass. Finally, she whispered, "Mrs. Hale?" The way she said it, soft, unsure, told me everything. She hadn't come to fight. She had come to face the truth. "Yes," I said quietly. "That's me." Her lips trembled. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" I hesitated, not because I was afraid, but because I wasn't sure if my heart was ready. But then I stepped aside. "Come in." She sat on the edge of the couch, too polite to touch anything, too ashamed to look at me. I poured tea. It was the only thing I knew how to do when words felt too heavy. When I handed her the cup, her hands shook. "I didn't know," she said finally, her voice breaking. "I swear I didn't know he was married." I didn't answer right away. Instead, I watched the steam rise between us, two women bound by the same lie. She took a deep breath. "He told me his wife had passed away years ago. He said he was lonely. I believed him." She let out a painful laugh. "I even felt sorry for him." Her eyes lifted to mine, full of guilt. "When I found out the truth, I left him. But I couldn't sleep until I spoke to you." I looked at her, really looked. She couldn't have been more than 30. The same age I was when I still believed forever was guaranteed. And in that moment, something inside me softened. I thought I would hate her. But what I felt instead was recognition. She was a mirror of the woman I once was. Naive, trusting, eager to love someone who wasn't ready to be honest. "I believe you," I said gently. Her eyes widened. You do?" I nodded. "He lied to you the same way he lied to me. The difference is, I had 30 years to get used to it." She covered her mouth, trying not to cry. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you." "You didn't," I said. "He did." For a while, we just sat in silence. Two women on opposite sides of the same heartbreak. The ticking clock in the living room was the only sound between us. Then she whispered, "I loved him." Her honesty didn't hurt me, it humbled me. "I know," I said quietly. "I did too." She looked down. "Do you hate me?" I thought about it. Then I shook my head. "No. I've spent too much time hating myself for not seeing what was in front of me. I don't have space left to hate you." Her tears spilled over then, hot and silent. And maybe for the first time, I saw her not as the woman who replaced me, but as the woman who was also betrayed. After a while, she reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. "I found this in his drawer," she said. "I think you should have it." Annie was an everfest, bod. Inside was a letter, his handwriting unmistakable. It wasn't addressed to anyone. Just a single sentence. "I don't know how to be the man she deserves." I read it twice, my throat tightening. And then I smiled sadly. "Now he knows," I said. She exhaled shakily. "I just wanted to say, you deserve better than him." "So do you," I replied. She gave a small, grateful nod. When she stood up to leave, I walked her to the door. Before she stepped out, she turned and said softly, "I hope you find peace, Mrs. Hale." I smiled. "I already have. It just took me longer to notice." After she left, I sat alone with the letter. For the first time, I didn't cry. Instead, I felt something else, something calm, clean, almost light. Forgiveness. Not for him. For myself? For all the years I had silenced my instincts, excused his absence, believed his lies. That night, I lit a candle and read the letter one last time before placing it in the fireplace. The paper curled and blackened, and the flames whispered the only goodbye I needed. As the smoke rose, I whispered to the empty room, "May the next woman he loves learn to love herself first." I slept peacefully that night. Not because everything was okay, but because I finally accepted that it didn't have to be. Tell me in the comments, if you were in my place, would you forgive the other woman or would you shut the door? I'd love to know what your heart says. And please, let me know where you're watching from. Our family drama stories have reached women from Texas to Toronto, Manila to Canada, and it warms my heart every time I read your words. Subscribe to Voices of Auntie Tae for more family drama stories, stories of heartbreak, healing, and the quiet kind of forgiveness that makes us human. Because sometimes, forgiveness isn't for the one who hurt you. It's the gift you give yourself to start living again. It's strange how healing doesn't come all at once. It doesn't arrive with fireworks or grand declarations. It comes quietly like sunlight through curtains after a long night. After Emily left, the house felt different. Not emptier, just honest. Like the walls had finally exhaled. For the first time in months, I felt no anger when I said his name out loud. Just a dull ache, like a bruise that had learned how to stop hurting. That night, I took out a pen and a blank sheet of paper. I wasn't sure what I wanted to say, only that I needed to say it. Not to him, but to myself. At the top, I wrote, "Dear Richard." And then I began, "Dear Richard, I'm not writing this to blame you. You've already done that to yourself, in ways I'll never see. I'm writing this because the woman I used to be deserves closure, and so do I. For years, I believed love meant sacrifice. That being a good wife meant forgiving quietly, smiling when I wanted to cry, and pretending that loyalty could fix loneliness. I know now that love isn't supposed to make you small. It's supposed to make you shine. You dimmed my light, Richard. Not because you wanted to, but because you were afraid of how bright it could be. And I allowed it. I made myself smaller to make you feel bigger. I don't hate you for what you did. You taught me what I no longer want to accept. You reminded me that peace is more valuable than company, and that loneliness with honesty is still better than love built on lies. I don't wish you pain. I hope one day you look at the person in the mirror and see more than regret. Because despite everything, a small part of me will always wish you find peace, just not at the cost of mine. Goodbye, the woman who finally remembered her own worth." I read the letter 3 times. Each time, the words felt lighter, like a burden being lifted from my chest. I didn't cry. I didn't burn it like in the movies. I simply folded it neatly, placed it in an old jewelry box, and tucked it away. It wasn't for him to read. It was for me to release. The next morning, I opened the curtains wide. Sunlight filled the house. The same kitchen that once held secrets now glowed with warmth. I made coffee strong, dark, exactly how I liked it. For years, I'd made it milder because he said bitterness ruined the taste. But that morning, I drank it black. And for the first time, it didn't taste bitter at all. It tasted like freedom. Days turned into weeks. I started walking every morning, greeting neighbors I used to pass without noticing. I joined a local book club. I learned to paint. And sometimes, I caught myself humming again, not sad songs, but quiet ones. It's funny we spend so long building our lives around someone else that we forget how to exist in our own space. But once you do, it feels like learning how to breathe again. One afternoon, while painting by the window, I saw an old couple walking hand in hand down the street. They looked so peaceful, so steady, and instead of feeling envy, I smiled. Because I realized something. Love doesn't always mean forever. Sometimes, love's only purpose is to teach you how to find yourself again. That evening, I sat by the fireplace watching the flames dance softly. The jewelry box with my letter rested nearby. I whispered to it, "You can stay here. I'm done carrying you." I felt tears coming not of sadness, but of gratitude. For surviving, for learning, for not letting betrayal define me, because healing isn't forgetting. It's remembering without breaking. Later, my daughter called again. "Mom," she said, "you sound different." I laughed softly. "I think that's the sound of peace." She smiled through the phone. "I'm proud of you." I looked out the window, the last light of day stretching across the sky, and said, "I'm proud of me too." That night, I opened my journal one last time. On the final page, I wrote, "This is not the end of my story. It's just the beginning of my peace. I will." And as I closed the book, I realized something powerful. He had taken my trust, my faith, my marriage, but not my hope. That still belonged to me. When I went to bed, I left the window open. The wind moved through the curtains softly, carrying the scent of rain and new beginnings. And for the first time in a long time, I whispered not, "Why me?" but "Thank you." Because sometimes what feels like the end of love is just the start of becoming who you were always meant to be. Tell me in the comments, have you ever written a letter you never sent, one that helped you finally let go? And please share where you're watching from. I love seeing your names and cities in the comments. New York, London, Manila, Canada. Every message reminds me that healing is universal. Subscribe to Voices of Auntie Tae for more heartfelt family drama stories. Stories about love, loss, and the quiet courage of starting over. Because sometimes, closure isn't something they give you. It's something you write for yourself. A year can change everything or nothing at all. It depends on how you spend it. For me, that year was both an ending and a beginning. I rebuilt myself slowly, like stitching torn fabric, one patient thread at a time. There were mornings I still woke up expecting to hear his footsteps, and nights when I reached for a shadow that wasn't there. But somewhere between the loneliness and the healing, I found peace. I stopped asking why. I stopped replaying every memory like a broken record. And one day, I woke up, looked in the mirror, and saw someone new, someone stronger, someone softer, someone whole. It was a chilly autumn morning when I saw him again. I was at the cafe downtown, the same one where I'd once watched him sit with her. Funny, isn't it? Life brings you back to the same places, but never with the same heart. I didn't plan to see him. I had my book, my tea, my peace, and that was enough. Then I heard his voice, low, familiar. It was like hearing an old song you once loved but don't hum anymore. When I looked up, he was standing by the door, older, tired, holding a paper cup of coffee like it was the only thing keeping him steady. His hair was grayer, his posture heavier. When our eyes met, time didn't rewind. It simply paused. He blinked, surprised. "Mary?" he said softly, almost a question. I smiled. "Richard." He approached the table slowly, hesitant, as if I might vanish if he moved too fast. "May I?" I gestured to the chair. "Go ahead." In waste of agi. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. There was no anger left to fuel words. Just quiet, the kind that comes after too much has already been said. "You look good," he said finally. "Thank you," I replied. "You look different." He laughed nervously. "I've had a year to age." "So have I," I said. "But somehow you aged better," he whispered. I smiled faintly. "I had peace. You should try it sometime." He looked down, fidgeting with the cup. "I heard you sold the house." "Yes," I said. "It was too big for one person. I found something smaller, cozier. Mine." He nodded. Silence again. Then, softly, he said, "I'm sorry, Mary." I didn't flinch. I had waited so long for that apology that, by the time it came, I no longer needed it. He continued, his voice trembling. "I ruined everything. I thought I was chasing happiness, but all I did was destroy the one person who ever loved me for real." I looked at him, the man who had once been my forever, and for the first time, I didn't see my husband. I saw a man who made a mistake he'd have to live with. "I believe you're sorry," I said softly. He looked surprised. "But it doesn't change anything, does it?" I shook my head. "Forgiveness isn't the same as going back. It's just letting go of the weight." He swallowed hard. "She left, you know. Emily." I nodded. "I figured. She said she couldn't love a man who didn't know how to be honest." I met his eyes. "She's right." He laughed bitterly. "Seems we both learned that too late." "Maybe not too late," I said, "just late enough to start living differently." He stared at me for a long time, then whispered, "I don't deserve your kindness." Rive now haven stayed and stated belting of the Compston with a paired continuing where, my savor with things for matters, that it was pritting of the parrot condition, and then not a Gretel be again of the past that had prevected parrot of the past of the parrot condition with prevent. "This isn't kindness," I said. "It's peace." He nodded slowly, understanding. "You were always stronger than me." "No," I said. "I just learned how to stop breaking myself to keep others whole." He smiled sadly. "I'm glad you're okay." I took a sip of tea. "I am. I hope you find you're okay too." We talked a little longer about our daughter, the weather, the small, safe topics that live in the space between two people who used to know everything about each other. There was no bitterness. Just closure. A soft, final chapter written in eye contact instead of words. When he stood up to leave, he hesitated. Can I ask you something? Sure. If you could go back before all of this, would you do anything differently? I thought about it for a long moment. Then I smiled. No, because every wound taught me how to heal. And without the pain, I might never have found myself. Sage, I manner resentiva, and their inter apsit to is laughtavound. He nodded, eyes glistening. Goodbye, Mary. Goodbye, Richard. And that was it. No dramatic ending, no tears. Just two people standing in the wreckage of what once was, finally ready to walk away from it. When I left the cafe, the wind was cold but kind. The world looked new, not because it had changed, but because I had. I walked home slowly, the city alive around me, and whispered to myself, "You did it, you made it through." That night, I wrote one last line in my journal. I didn't lose a husband. I rediscovered a woman. And as I turned off the lamp, I realized I wasn't thinking about what I'd lost anymore. I was grateful for what I'd gained. Myself. Tell me in the comments. Have you ever met someone from your past and realized you'd already healed? What would you say to them now? And please share where you're watching from. I love reading your comments from across the world. California, Singapore, Toronto, London, Canada. Each message reminds me how stories like these connect us all. Subscribe to Voices of Auntie Tae for more family drama stories, stories about heartbreak, redemption, and the beauty of forgiving yourself. Because sometimes the happiest ending is simply being free. 1.5 years. That's how long it's been since the night everything fell apart. Sometimes when I look back, it feels like someone else's life, like I'm watching a story I used to belong to but no longer recognize. The pain that once felt endless has softened, like an old scar. It doesn't hurt anymore, but it still reminds me of where I've been, and maybe that's what healing really is. Not erasing what broke you, but learning how to live beautifully beside the cracks. My mornings are quiet now. Not empty, just peaceful. I wake up early, open the curtains wide, and let the light in. I make my coffee strong, exactly the way I like it. Sometimes I walk through the garden barefoot, feeling the cool grass beneath my feet, the earth holding me steady. There are still moments when a memory sneaks in: the sound of his laugh, the way he used to hum while shaving, the soft clink of his wedding ring against a cup. But now, instead of aching, those memories just exist. They no longer control me. I have learned that peace doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering without pain. One evening, as the sun melted behind the hills, I sat on the porch with a notebook in my lap, the same notebook that once held my heartbreak. But this time, I wasn't writing about loss. I was writing about life, about the woman who rose from the ashes of her silence, the one who found strength in the mirror she used to avoid, the one who stopped begging to be loved and started loving herself instead. I used to think marriage defined me, that my worth was tied to someone's last name, to a ring, to promises that time could keep or break. But I've learned that we are never someone's possession. We are our own story, with or without a witness. I remember once asking God, why me? Why this pain? And though he never answered in words, the world around me did. In the sunrise, in the quiet laughter of children outside, in the kindness of strangers, in every small reminder that love, true love, still exists, even if it changes form. Sometimes people ask if I'd ever love again, and I smile, because they don't understand. I already do. Not in the way I used to. Not in the way that needs to be seen or touched, but in the way that fills my soul when I wake up in peace, when I see beauty in ordinary things, when I choose gratitude over grief. That is love too, maybe the truest kind. Last week I found the old letter I had written to Richard, the one I never sent. I read it one last time. This time, I didn't feel sorrow or nostalgia, only gratitude. Because if none of that had happened, I might never have met the version of myself sitting here today. A woman who no longer whispers, "I'm not enough." A woman who knows she was never the problem, just the wrong match for someone who couldn't love fully. A woman who now fills her own silence with laughter. That night, I took the letter outside. The moon was full, soft, forgiving. I lit a small candle and whispered to the wind, "Thank you for the lessons." Then, I let the flame fade on its own. No drama, no tears, just peace. Because every story has to end somewhere, but not every ending is meant to hurt. Some endings simply say, "You made it." Now, when I meet other women at the store, at the cafe, online, and I hear them whisper about betrayal, or heartbreak, or the loneliness that follows. I see myself in them. I see their trembling hands, their quiet smiles that hide the weight of endurance. And I want to tell them, you are not broken. You are becoming. You are not losing everything. You are finding yourself again. Because when life takes away what you thought you needed most, it's often clearing space for what you truly deserve. So tonight, before I sleep, I whisper a prayer not for him, not for the past, but for anyone still standing in the dark, waiting for the light to return. And I hope our story reaches them. Maybe it finds them in a quiet room, with tired eyes and a heavy heart. Maybe they hear my voice and realize they're not alone. Because that's why I tell these stories. Not for revenge, not for pity, but for connection, for the reminder that no matter how much it hurts, the heart has a way of healing again and again. Tell me in the comments, have you ever gone through something that broke you but later realized it saved you too? I'd love to know your story and where you're watching from. Your words always remind me that no matter where we live, California, Manila, London, Canada, heartbreak speaks the same language. Subscribe to Voices of Auntie Tae for more family drama stories that touch your soul, remind you of your strength, and help you see beauty even in broken places. Because every scar is proof that healing happened. And sometimes, the bravest thing a woman can do is choose to begin again. If you've made it this far, you've walked beside me through every quiet heartbreak, every lie I had to unlearn, every moment I chose to rise when falling would have been easier. And maybe, just maybe, you see a piece of yourself somewhere in my story. Maybe you're sitting alone right now, wondering when the pain will stop, wondering why you gave everything and were still left empty-handed. Maybe you're replaying the what-ifs, the could-have-beens, the nights you stayed even when your heart wanted to leave. If that's you, this is for you. I want you to know something no one told me when I was breaking. You don't have to be strong every second. You don't have to smile through every storm. You're allowed to grieve the version of yourself who loved too much, trusted too long, and stayed too quiet. But please never confuse heartbreak with failure. You didn't fail because someone couldn't love you right. You succeeded because you loved with a pure heart. And one day, the same heart that broke you will heal you too. Healing doesn't come overnight. It comes in small, invisible ways. In the first morning you wake up without crying, in the first laugh that doesn't hurt, in the first time you catch your reflection and see hope again. That's how peace returns. Not loudly, not all at once, but gently, like light touching the edge of a dark room. If you've ever been betrayed, remember this. Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's choosing not to carry their mistake any longer. It's saying, I deserve peace more than I deserve revenge. Let that be your quiet victory. Not proving them wrong, but proving to yourself that you can still love, still trust, and still begin again. Because you can, and you will. I no longer measure my life by what I lost. I measure it by what I've found since. Peace in solitude, joy in simplicity, strength in softness, and if my story has reached you tonight, I hope it reminds you that no matter how dark it feels, your story isn't over. You're just turning a page. Tell me in the comments, if this story touched your heart, where are you listening from tonight? From California? Manila? Canada? Toronto? I read every single one because your stories, your words, your presence mean more than you know. Subscribe to Voices of Auntie Tae for more family drama stories. Stories that hold your hand through pain, sit with you in silence, and whisper, you are not alone. Because no matter how broken you feel tonight, there's a light waiting inside you. And it's been there all along. This isn't just my story, it's ours. Every woman who has loved, lost, and learned to love herself again.